Hey everyone, Joe here. Well, today I got another gear review for you. Now what we have today is the Canon EF 35mm f2 IS USM lens. Now this is a really great lens I recently picked up because I like 50mm. So 35 on an APS-C body is 50mm. Anyway, I really do like this lens. I want to do a review on it, and I'm pretty sure everybody else is probably going to like this lens too. There are some pros and cons to this lens, so we'll get into that throughout this review. First, I want to go over the specifications on it, then kind of go over some of the build quality. Then I got some photos I really want to show you. And finally, we're going to finish this video off with some video stuff showing you how much the lens flare is, focusing speed, and how well the image stabilization works as far as video-wise. So let's first go over some of the specifications. Now this lens has 10 elements in 8 groups. Has a 63-degree viewing angle on full frame. It is rear focusing. Now when I say rear focusing, in case anybody's wondering, a lot of lenses like to extenuate in the front when focusing. This lens is not one of them. So as you can see in the back here, when you turn it, you may not be able to see on the camera here, it actually moves in and out, which is really great because you don't have to worry about anything moving on front. Now the filter thread is 67mm, which is also the same as the new Nano USM 18135. So in case you want to get a filter for this, you can share them back and forth, which is always a plus. It's always great when a lot of your lenses have the same ring for filters and stuff. That way you don't have to buy a bunch of extra filters. Now this lens is actually fairly heavy, coming in at 11.8 ounces. For a prime, it's not an L grade prime. That's still pretty hefty little lens here. Now it has 4 stops of image stabilization going by Canon, and for my testing, it's actually probably really more around 3.5, but 4 I guess you could say. And you can actually turn it on and off inside here. And I really do like these buttons on these newer model lenses from Canon. Unlike the older ones that had the really cheap feeling buttons, these feel very tactile, and also you're not worried about accidentally throwing them off or on. Now it is a ring type ultrasonic motor in this, which means, like I said, when you turn this, everything turns inside. This is not a fly-by-wire system. This is a full ultrasonic motor, which works really nice. And it is clutch based, so you can turn it all day long. You don't have to worry about it overextending. Now, the aperture blades in this are 8 blades, so it can kind of help render out decent enough bokeh. But it's kind of one of those things that's not rounded, so it may not give you the smoothest bokeh. I really don't think anybody's going to buy this lens for bokeh anyway, because even if you buy a 50mm lens on a full frame camera, or you bought this as a 35mm lens for a bit wider angle than 50, normally those folks are not going to look for the softest bokeh possible. But as long as it kind of shifts the background out of focus just a little bit, it's normally going to be enough to keep most people happy. Now this lens, Msrp is $5.99, although you can find it on Canon as well as Amazon at the moment for $5.49 at the time of making this video. So build quality, let's kind of go over that a little bit here. Like I said, kind of heavy. The lens was a lot bigger than I was expecting it to be when I bought it. When I originally bought this lens, I thought it'd be just a little bit smaller, not a lot smaller, but I thought it was a little bit smaller. In comparison, here is the 50mm STM lens. As you can see, this lens is much taller. Both of these are full frame lenses, and the 35 here is also bigger overall, despite this one being an f1.8 lens, and this one being an f2. So anyway, this lens is a little bit bigger, and if I compare it, say, over here to the Nano USM lens, you can see the Nano USM lens is taller altogether. It is about the same width, so kind of give you a comparison idea. Overall, like I said, setting in my hand, nice little chunk of lens, not too big, not too small, just very nice. Let me put this back on the camera here. So overall, the lens turns out to be pretty decent build quality, metal mount, decent plastic, fairly thick. Not weather sealed, but overall I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with this lens. This is not a lens for like the adventure type people who's going to be getting wet anyway, but somebody is looking for that, there is the the L lens, which is a lot more expensive. This one coming in $550. I think it's a really good buy for it. So anyway, that's stuff on the build quality. Like I said, build quality is fantastic. Let's kind of go over here to the computer behind us and take a look at some photos. Okay, everyone. Well, I have 12 images here. The first 5 is really to kind of demonstrate the sharpness and kind of show you the chroma and stuff that it has. Because, most lenses will wide open. The next 5 images is really just to demonstrate bokeh. And the last 2 images kind of demonstrate, indoor and outdoor portrait work. So let's kind of go ahead and open up our first image here. I'm going to pull it into the develop module just to show you that the detail is turned off and the lens corrections is turned off. So we can get a good idea of what's going on here. Okay, so anyway, look at this image. Zoom into the center. Even with sharpening turned off, it's still a pretty decent image. Wide open at f2 though, we can still see a lot of magenta for this chromatic aberration and stuff. Now this is a very bright, high contrast sky, and as you can see, it's probably blown out there. So those are blown out areas, so it's going to be very hard for any lens not to have some chroma in those areas. Now if we go over here to the corners, we can see the corners are still a little softer than the center. Not hugely bad though. I've seen lenses with much worse corners. And like I said though, this is without any sharpening turned on. So if I was to go over here and flip on sharpening, turn it on for proper sharpening, as you can see, everything sharpened up really, really tack sharp. So if you did any kind of sharpening to kind of counteract that anti-aliasing filter in the camera, boom, lens is tack sharp. Actually, my personal opinion is the anti-aliasing filter is actually doing this lens actually an injustice. So we turn it back off. Now let's zoom back out here and look around, and you can see the corners may seem a little dark. Brighten it up, doing lens corrections. So anyway, let's go ahead and go back to the library modules here. And I want to show you, the f2 one to f2.8. Stop and down one stop here. Let's do comparison mode. And remember, we did turn these off. As you can see from the center here, that from f2 to f2.8, there is a touch of improvement on sharpening. Well, let's go over here to the corners. And see, the corners are actually sharpened up quite a lot more. So, at f2.8, this lens is pretty much close enough to be sharp enough, most anybody, from corner to corner. As we can see also, the chroma has reduced just a little bit as well. Okay. So let's go here. Now let's grab an f2.8, f4 one. I did all these at one stop, so the first was f2, then f2.8, f4, 5/6, then f8. I figured that was just a logical way to go with this. Now let's compare these again. Okay, now we have the f2.8 one here on our left and the f4 one on the right. First, let's take a look at the chroma here. You can see by f4, chroma is cleared up and gone. At least as far as I can tell. I'm a little bit colorblind when it comes to chroma. So luckily Lightroom can clean it up. But as you can see, I think for the most part, yeah, there probably is a little bit if you look really, really close. But it really did already clean up at least 90% of it, which is a pretty good showing. Also, you do see just a touch more sharpness and contrast here. Not a whole lot, but it is slightly noticeable. And of course, we go over here to the corners, and we see the corner from the f4 one is a touch sharper than the f2.8 one. Not huge though. This is not nothing I'd really be concerned about. The f2.8 to me is actually sharp enough for this lens. Now do keep in mind this is on the Canon 80D at this, so the Canon 80D does is a little more demanding on a lens than say a full frame camera for the most part, unless you're shooting with the 5DSR. Okay, let me see here. Now let's just look at these last two here just individually. You don't have to compare them. But as you can see, at f5.6, the corners rating the same about as it does f4. Not a huge bump in sharpness. And let's go over here to the next one. And this is the f8 one, as you can see on the histogram up here, right below it. f8 is sharp all the way from the center. And went to the center and all the way to the corners. Now, like I mentioned, you can do a little sharpening here. Let me turn it on. And you can see bam, it is deadly sharp. So if anybody's worried about sharpness on this lens, like I said, it's just the anti-aliasing filter really doing this lens injustice. Proper sharpening, and this clears up super nice. Okay, here. Let's go back out of the develop module, back into the library. Now these next 5 images here are really just for bokeh demonstration. And like I said, this one's shot at f2. Not a little bad little image. Just kind of wanted to show everybody some demonstration of bokeh. You know, f2, f2.8, f4, f5.6, then f8. Now my personal opinion, I still think it may look a little bit busy to me. And it doesn't look horrible, but it still feels a little busy. It's soft, but still kind of busy. Now, that's my own personal taste. This is a very demanding background. As you can see, there's a lot of twigs and stuff. Well, excuse me, here we go, a lot of house and stuff in the background. And we are up really close. So you can blur the background out, but I still feel it may be just a little busy to me. But, you know, everybody has their own personal taste. I have seen lenses that's much worse, but I also seen lenses a little bit better. Okay, so anyway, let's go over here. Now here's another photo here, and this is kind of shot outside at f2.8. As you can see, you know, zoom in here on the eye where I focused in on it. You know, really sharp lens, you know, not bad. This was shot at ISO 100, 35mm, of course, since that's the lens we're using. And f2.8 at 1/400th of a second. This is the lens I was focusing over at. Plenty sharp, not a problem. A lot of nice details and stuff in the skin. Really, really nice. Like I said, the background for those trees and stuff may look a little busy for some folks. To me, it is kind of still a little busy. But understand this is a 35mm lens, which is about the 50mm equivalent on a APS-C body if you want to compare it to like full frame. So, you know, most people are not going to really be blowing the background too much out of focus anyway. Just maybe a little softening to kind of, you know, give some separation. But anyway, let's go over here to the, well, we want to first show you this over here. Let's put it into develop module. I just want to give you an idea here. Blow up to the eye here. If we turn on sharpening, as you can see, ridiculously tack sharp. Even on the Canon 80D, you can easily print, you know, poster size prints with this. You know, if I'm showing at a gallery or something other. No worries whatsoever. So yeah, tack sharp. And here we got another one. As you can see, detail here, sharpening is turned off. Let me zoom in here. Now this is shot f7.1, which is what I normally shoot in the studio at, because I shoot on the 80D most of the time, and it is more than enough depth of field what I'm doing. So anyway, looking at here, really sharp, but same results. This is also done with, you know, flash and stuff. So let me turn this on. As you can see here, proper sharpening. It is razor sharp. Even on an APS-C camera, unless you have the lens, you know, dialed in as far as micro focus adjustments, you're going to have a really sharp lens to work with here. Not even an issue whatsoever. So if you're worried about printing out some high resolution images, you know, very large, say 20 inches by 30 inches, don't worry, this lens will actually cover it. Okay, everyone. Well, as you can see, you know, you have to stop down just a little bit with this lens, but overall, I really don't think wide open f2 is really that bad, especially on a demanding camera like the Canon 80D here. You know, these APS-C cameras with really small pixel pitches, and also like the 5DSR, really do put a strain on optical performance of any lens. So to be able to show that decent even at f2 is actually a pretty good sign that this lens is fantastically sharp. So anyway, talking about the autofocus speed on this lens, it'd been a regular USM motor. It's still pretty decent. It's about average, really. It's not too slow, not too fast. I think for the most part, for what this lens's in use is, the focus speed is perfectly fine with it. Most folks won't be using this to shoot sports or wildlife, you know. Let's just be quite honest. So anybody that's kind of using this, kind of using it for wide angle portraiture, or like building, you know, kind of like landscapes or something of that nature. Because this is technically a wide angle lens. It's not actually a portrait style lens that you get from like a medium telephoto. So overall, I think the focus speed is really good. Being that it also focuses dead accurate every time, this is probably the most accurate lens I have as far as focusing speed that I've tested so far. It nails focus every time. When I did actually set this thing up in the camera and hook up focal software to calibrate it, I did have to put I think it was around a +7 or +8 in my micro focus adjustments to actually dial it in just perfect to focus each time. But it doesn't hunt around. It nails that one spot every time when tested. So that's a really, really good showing for this lens. Now, as far as the video, the image stabilization and everything. Now, the image stabilization seems to be really tuned in for photos. When using videos and stuff, even holding the camera steady, moving around just a little bit, you can tell the image wants to kind of be steady for a second, then jerk. Then be steady, then jerk. So it really is the image stabilization. You wouldn't really want to use this lens for video, especially handheld. Of course, you can put it on a tripod and just cut the image stabilization off altogether and have some very smooth video. But as far as handheld use, it's the image stabilization. You can just really tell it's just meant for photos, not for video. Now the Sunflare, it's about an average, really. I've seen lenses that are much, much worse when facing up against the sun. Of course, you really should never take a photo directly into the sun anyway. So the performance on this is about average. There are some a little bit better, but there's a lot of lenses that are much, much worse, especially older lenses. So if you're going to be using this lens outdoors, then just simply get one of these little, pedal style lens hoods. This one's from JJC. It's one of these off Amazon. I'll link this one down in the description as well with this lens, because this is a really nice one. The texture really fits this lens, and it looks very, very nice. So I know the Canon ones are really expensive. I don't know why Canon charges so much for them. I don't know why Canon doesn't include them on top of that. That's one of the biggest complaints with Canon. But if anybody's interested, I'll link this one down in the description. I use it. It's actually a really decent one. So you do want to use, like I say, a pedal lens hood with it when shooting outdoors. Other than that, I think for the most part, you're not going to have any really flare issues too bad with this lens. Ghosting and also lack of contrast is, pretty much well handled for the most part. Now, the image quality on this thing overall to me is actually very, very good. You have great micro contrast in it, really good color reproduction. And the image quality on this lens is just really, really good, in my honest opinion. Like I said, when we tested this out, I had to be fair to all lenses, I had to kind of turn off any kind of sharpening in Lightroom when I showed you the photos and everything. But, it really is the anti-aliasing filter in this camera is really just doing this lens injustice in those photoshops. If this was put on the 5DSR, this lens would show up much sharper, in my honest opinion, just because of the anti-aliasing filter. Some might disagree with me, but, you have your own opinions. I have mine. But I think the image quality for what you're getting, for what you're paying for this lens, is actually really, really well. Now, why did I buy this lens? Well, I have the 18 to 35 art lens from Sigma, on the camera that's filming right now. Works great for video, but the autofocus is horrendous. That lens is a touch sharper. It's actually a lot sharper at wide open, the Sigma is, but the autofocus was so whacked up I could never really use it unless I shot in live view. So I got this lens to replace that one. In my honest opinion, if I had everything to do over again, I would have rather just got this lens to start with and not even got that one. Because it doesn't matter how well or how sharp something is. Yes, the art lens is a little bit sharper, but if it cannot focus correctly, then I had rather just have, a lens that's a little bit not as sharp, but focuses accurate. Because if it's sharp and you miss focus, it's just useless lens. It's not usable. So I really like this lens. I really do love this lens. It is part of my daily kit. I use this lens a lot. I will be continuing to use this lens for many, many years. And anyway, that's it for this little gear review. Like I said, highly recommend this lens. Links to it and the lens pedal lens hood will be linked down in the description below if anybody's interested. And of course, if you look on any other videos and stuff that I've got, it's always listed down in the link as far as my photo gear as well. But anyway, that's it for this little gear review. I hope you like it. If you do, if you found it helpful, how about give me a thumbs up? Thumbs up is always highly appreciated. If you're not a subscriber to my channel, please take time to subscribe. Subscribing is free. It's for you and lets you know when I release more videos. Until next time, everyone, thank you for watching.